it's interesting. It's in those deployments, to your point, where the greatest learning happens. So I consider myself not a creator as much as a curator, collect ideas, codify it in a certain way, and then to try to deploy it. And what I find in many cases, originally, it's too complex, too, I don't know if sophisticated is the right word, but there's too many moving parts, and it's very hard to deploy. So in that stage, working with my businesses, and ultimately a secondary set of clients, I learn how to really boil it down to the essence, the core functional stuff. Um, I think it's Occam's razor, the concept of the simpler it is, the more effective it is.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
we try to do.
Yeah, interesting. It's very consistent with something I've come up with in the last couple of years. I call a 3T training process. So you teach the transfer knowledge, you test, which is what you're doing. You test to then kind of make certain the person can apply what you taught them. And then you train or mentor on an ongoing basis until you master it, until the
Mhm.
person masters it. And that's what I'm hearing you say is you're doing the same thing through these 17 businesses, and then you bring it out and you're like, hey, look what we found. We proved this. We're in the back kitchen here. We got this great recipe, and this is going to taste great. Just try this dish.
Yeah, right, right. I love to study comedians. I do some public speaking, and I think they're the best orators because there's no PowerPoints, there's nothing to lean on. It's just your next joke. What I discovered in this process of studying comedians is many of them, to your point, David, will go to these smaller venues and they'll try things out and what joke lands and what doesn't land. So they have a theory of what will work, but most of it doesn't. And some of the stuff that lands, I've heard in these interviews with the comedians, they said, I didn't even think it was that funny, but it crushes with the audience. It's then the Netflix special that has the best of the prior, 50 or 100 tests that they run. And
Yeah,
so I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's a really good observation. That's what we need to do in our business is test to get to the essence.
Yeah. So it's funny you bring up comedians. I hadn't thought of it that way. But my brother was best friends with Robin Williams in junior and
Oh,
senior year of high
wow.
school, and they stayed friends. And one of the reasons they stayed friends is Phil didn't ask Robin for anything. They just
Yeah.
get together, they go for a run or they do whatever. They were just buddies.
Yeah.
And but I remember him saying two things. One is he said, yeah, Robin's testing some new material. He's down at the comedy, whatever it is in San Francisco,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're gonna go check it out and be there. And the other thing he said was that um, they went to college together at College of Marin, which had a great theater program,
Mm.
and they did theater together, which was fun. But he lived with Robin for a short time, but it wasn't very long. It was like less than a year, I think. And I didn't think I asked him why, but he said I just couldn't handle it because he would come home and he'd be testing this material on me, or
Constantly.
he'd be just hyped up because Robin was either super hyped up or just quiet,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just thinking. And he was a wonderful human being, just a wonderful, wonderful guy.
As a
So
fan, that's the perception that you get, and also is watching him, he seemed to have, this hyper energy that was untouchable when he was performing at times. And then
oh
you would
yeah,
see the other side too through stories, from people in that space.
yeah.
And I think in business, if I can just kind of translate this back to business, is the final once you kind of nailed this stuff, that's the hyper amazing performance. I find of all the research I do, it's usually about 1% to 2% of the stuff I've collected that has the 99% impact, and the rest of the stuff is interesting, but not of service.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I think I would agree. I would agree. There's certain overarching
Mm.
strategies or systems. I had to learn how to be systematic. And but then I've learned that there's also these little disciplines or mini systems, little things like what I call sanctuary time, where I got to start each day where I got to check in and hold myself accountable. Did I do what I wanted to do yesterday? And okay, what's the new information? What are my standards? What's my plan for today?